Well, joining us, as I said, in studio is Emmanuel Nahshon, Israel's foreign ministry spokesman. And as we noted there, Emmanuel, you did get the BBC to amend that one headline, but we are talking only about one headline on one article in a flood of articles that in many ways do not paint a sympathetic picture of Israel's actions in Gaza. So why just focus in on that one?
Well, it's a small victory, and you have to start somewhere. So this is where we start. We know that this is a long struggle and a long battle, and it's obvious that by changing one headline, you don't really change the whole picture. But this is part of an ongoing effort by our foreign ministry, and we are not alone in this. And we demand that the international media will portray the situation here as it is, because it's obvious that those headlines do shape public opinion, that public opinion has a major impact over decision makers. And when decision makers have to take a decision with regard to Israel in the Gaza context, they should have the proper information.
Let's talk about impact for a moment then. How does that ongoing media war, which happens every time throughout every conflict between Israel and Hamas, impact in real time the conflict on the ground, or the decision makers in Jerusalem, for example?
Well, I think that it has a major impact because we always look at ourselves through the eyes of the other. And there is a lot of international media here in Israel, and the way they report on Israel is extremely important to us. It is important to us here, it's important to Jewish communities all over the world, and it's important to friends of Israel and to simple people who simply want to know the truth. And it has an impact over the way we conduct also those security issues and the way we take decisions. Because despite the fact that security is obviously the #1 priority, we want to look good. No country wishes to look bad in the international media when it protects its own citizens, and it's perfectly legitimate to demand, and this is exactly what we did today, and I'm very happy that it all worked out properly. I know that my tweet was considered by some as a little bit aggressive or brutal, but obviously in 2018 that's the only way to pass your message across. You need to be there and to be clear.
Well, another criticism, Emmanuel, is that at the end of the day, there is a humanitarian situation in Gaza. Civilians are suffering. Yes, Israel argues Hamas bears the brunt of the blame, but Israel is a part of the equation, and even Israel improving its so-called public diplomacy, its Hasbara, Israel's not doing enough to change the reality on the ground.
But those are two different issues. There are decisions to be taken regarding the welfare of the population in Gaza. And we have stated time and again that Israel has absolutely nothing against. On the contrary, we are very much in favor of improving the living conditions in Gaza. It's good for the Gaza people, and it's good for us. But we cannot do that as long as Hamas controls everything. Imagine that everything that you send over to the Gaza Strip in favor of the population is taken by Hamas, sold and used for military purposes. Remember the cement which was needed in the Gaza Strip in the last years, which has all been used in order to build those attack tunnels against Israel. So we need to understand that you need to find a balance between the population in Gaza and the fact that everything is being misused against Israel. This is something, by the way, that we have explained to the international community, and I think that they understand it quite well.
If we take that a step further and we talk about policy and link that back to the media coverage that you say is consistently unfair towards Israel, some will say that Israel has a lack of actual foreign policy, or at least that's not being made clear. Israel does not have a foreign minister. For our viewers who aren't familiar with that, Netanyahu, the prime minister, is acting foreign minister. Is that not a problem? Maybe more at the root of how Israel might be portrayed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we have had foreign ministers in previous governments, and this did not make the coverage of Israel better.
But what about the policy?
Well, the policy is a consequence of the conditions in which we are. And we know that those are extremely complex conditions which are changing all the time. We can have a policy towards the Gaza Strip, but if it's not compatible with the reality, if it implies taking security risks which are unnecessary and which at the end of the day will blow up in our faces, then we have to re-examine this policy. Look at what has happened in the last years. We have been doing time and again things in favor of the population in Gaza, and all of this has been misused by Hamas.
So let's talk ceasefire just briefly. Alongside all of this is an attempted ceasefire happening in Cairo. A senior Hamas delegation just yesterday, before the stepping up in the escalation, was there speaking rather positively. We know that the Israeli government weighed this for several hours over the last week. Where does the Israeli government stand now on prospects of that pitched ceasefire?
Well, this is one of the issues which is, I assume, being discussed currently at the Israeli Security Cabinet. Can we reach some form of tranquilization of the situation in Gaza, or are we reaching, on the contrary, the possibility of war or of conflict? Now, it is not only an Israeli decision. This is a decision which has to be taken also by Hamas. And look at the Hamas leaders. You know, they are talking peace and discussions in Cairo, and the day after, they give the order to shoot those rockets. Those rockets did not shoot themselves by accident.
We should note there was an incident on the Gaza border, the circumstances of which are not clear, where two Gaza Hamas militants were killed by Israeli fire. That could have been the impetus for this particular rocket attacks by...
Well, you know, there is always a convenient explanation for anything and everything. When it comes to Hamas, they will always find a pretext in order to shoot rockets at Israel. And what was the pretext in the last 4 months when they were launching those balloons with and those kites, those incendiary kites? So the problem is not looking for a reason. They will always find a reason. The problem is to stop violence, and to do it in such a way which is good for Israel and which is good also for the population of Gaza.
Emmanuel, in the 40 seconds we have left, Colombia's outgoing president has recognized the state of Palestine. That has been slammed by the Israeli government, by the foreign ministry. What steps, if any, do you plan to take?
Well, we were extremely surprised and disappointed, and we read it in the Colombian media, and it's a huge disappointment. But we are trying to understand exactly what is the nature of this decision, and in what way does it imply or does it have an impact over the new Colombian administration, and we are in contact with the new Colombian administration, and we'll see what happens.